The highway had stopped moving 3 hours ago. Drivers sat in their cars, engines running, heat blasting. Some tried reversing. Others stepped out into the wind, only to realize they couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. By 4 p.m., the snow was waist deep. By 6 p.m., exhaust pipes were buried. By midnight, some of them were already dead. This is the story of the week an entire region of America went dark, got buried, and had to be dug out by the military. January 1978, Jimmy Carter's America. No weather apps, no emergency alerts buzzing on your phone. The most advanced warning system was a guy on the radio telling you to stock up on milk. Meteorologists knew a storm was coming. They just had no idea what it was about to become. People went to work that morning. Kids went to school. Commuters sat in traffic like it was any other Thursday. The sky was gray, sure. But gray skies in New England in January? That was Tuesday. What they didn't know was that two colossal weather systems were about to collide directly over the Northeast. One pushing up from the Gulf, one screaming down from Canada, and between them, a low-pressure zone so severe it would later be compared to a hurricane. The barometric pressure dropped faster than anyone had ever recorded. Winds hit 70 miles per hour. Snow fell at a rate of 4 inches per hour. And then, the temperature cratered. Within 6 hours, it wasn't a snowstorm anymore. It was a siege. Route 128 around Boston became a graveyard of metal and glass. Thousands of cars, bumper to bumper, buried in drifts taller than their roofs. Drivers who tried to walk for help collapsed within minutes. Frostbite set in before they reached the nearest exit. Some made it to overpasses and huddled underneath, shivering in groups, waiting for help that couldn't move. Others stayed in their cars, kept the engine running, kept the heat on, watched the snow pile higher against the windows. They didn't realize the exhaust pipe was blocked, didn't notice the headache creeping in, didn't feel themselves slipping away as carbon monoxide filled the cabin. Rescuers would find them days later, slumped over steering wheels, still strapped into seatbelts. Some with the radio still on. And this was only the first 12 hours. By Friday morning, the power grid started to fail. Transformers, coated in ice and hammered by wind, began exploding across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Each one that blew took hundreds of homes with it. Streetlights went dark, traffic signals died. Entire neighborhoods vanished into blackness. Inside those homes, families gathered in living rooms. They sealed off bedrooms to conserve heat, pulled mattresses downstairs, burned furniture in fireplaces. Some wrapped themselves in every blanket they owned and still shivered through the night. Refrigerators went warm. Frozen food in basements stayed frozen, ironically, because the houses themselves were turning into freezers. Pipes burst. Water stopped running. Toilets stopped flushing. People melted snow in pots just to drink. Emergency services couldn't respond. Ambulances sat useless in fire stations, buried to their roofs. Police cruisers were abandoned in snowbanks. A man in Revere had a heart attack. His wife called for help. The dispatcher told her nothing could reach them. He died on his kitchen floor while she held the phone. But the storm wasn't done yet. Saturday brought winds that topped 80 miles per hour in some areas. Coastal towns flooded as storm surges punched through seawalls. In Revere Beach, waves crashed into homes, froze instantly, and encased entire buildings in ice. Residents evacuated through second-story windows into boats, then watched their houses collapse under the weight. Snowdrifts reached heights of 15, 20, even 25 feet in some places. Cars weren't just stuck, they were erased. Entire streets disappeared. You could walk across the tops of telephone poles. Roofs buckled and caved in. Buildings that had stood for 100 years crumbled in a single night. And still, no one could move. By Sunday, the governor declared a state of emergency and did something unprecedented. He banned all cars from the roads. Not discouraged, banned. If you drove, you got arrested. Massachusetts became a ghost state. No traffic, no movement, just wind, snow, and silence. That's when the military arrived. National Guard convoys rolled in with trucks designed for war zones. They brought front loaders, personnel carriers, tanks. Actual tanks rumbling through suburban streets, clearing paths wide enough for ambulances to finally move again. Helicopters hovered over highways, dropping supplies to stranded drivers. Pilots flew through whiteout conditions, navigating by instinct, pulling people out of cars that had become tombs. Snowmobiles became the only reliable transport. Volunteers rode them through neighborhoods, checking on the elderly, delivering medicine, pulling people out of homes where the heat had been gone for days. In some towns, locals organized supply chains. Someone with a snowmobile would meet someone with a truck at the town line, hand off food and batteries, then head back into the buried streets. Churches opened their doors. Schools became shelters. Strangers slept shoulder to shoulder on gymnasium floors. People shared food with neighbors they'd never spoken to. In the middle of paralysis, something else emerged. Not panic, cooperation. But the cost was already mounting. By the time roads were passable again, the count began. 54 people dead in Massachusetts alone. 100 others across the region. Some from the cold. Some from carbon monoxide. Some from heart attacks triggered by shoveling snow. Some simply disappeared, buried so deep they wouldn't be found until the spring thaw. Rescue teams went car to car on Route 128, prying open doors, checking for survivors. Most of what they found were bodies, frozen in place, hands still gripping the wheel. The economic damage was catastrophic. Over $1 billion in losses. Businesses shuttered for weeks. Supply chains severed. Entire industries ground to a halt because no one could get to work. Factories sat silent. Grocery stores ran empty. Gas stations couldn't get fuel. It took a full week just to clear the highways. Another 2 weeks to restore power to everyone. Some towns didn't see their streets fully dug out until March. The blizzard exposed every fragile point in the system. It revealed how quickly modern life could collapse when the weather turned hostile. How dependent everything was on electricity, on movement, on the assumption that roads would stay open and help would always arrive. But it also revealed something else, that when systems fail, people don't. That neighbors become first responders. That strangers will risk their own safety to pull someone out of a snowbank. That a society, stripped down to its core, can still hold together when it has to. The Great Blizzard of 1978 didn't just bury the Northeast. It froze an entire region in place and forced it to survive on its own. No apps, no instant communication, just people, snow, and the raw question of whether they could outlast it. Most of them did, but for 100 who didn't, the storm was the last thing they ever saw. And for everyone who lived through it, January 1978 became the benchmark, the week they learned exactly how fast everything could stop and how much it would take to start again.